Okay, welcome everyone to the control workshop. Why we lose it and how do we keep it? Most importantly, right? Um, so it's kind of a trick question, right? When I say why do we lose it? Because the truth is that control is something that we always have. So when we don't feel like we're in control, it really is this idea that it's a feeling and it's always available to us. Now, the funny thing about the word control, when I've been looking at it so much as I've been talking about it and posting and doing things, that the word control kind of makes me like when I see it, I feel a little bit like it's something that just like this evil superpower, wants. Like when you want to dominate the world, you think of the word control. Like it's really this feeling of like Brene Brown talks about, right? Like this power over. But I want to talk about how control is really this thing that you get to have. It's like this skill, this your very own superpower. And it's going to bring a lot of big things to your life, but really where it shows up is in all the little places in your life. So we're going to dive in. And actually, before I get started, let me just say that everything that I'm going to share with you today is really around this idea um, that we are a product of our environment. So both where we have sort of evolved our brains, like we are set to the reason that, we can really connect on these really big issues is because all our brains really function the same way. We're all looking to create the same things for ourselves within our lives in a broad sense, right? We want to feel safe. We want to feel connected. We want to feel loved. We want to feel worthy, right? So this is like where the subconscious is really set and working at. So we were sort of born with this sort of this perspective, and then on top of that, we learn it. Okay, we learn it from the minute that we step into our families and our communities and our schools and every place that we're really engaging with other people. And this is what I mean when I say we're a product of our environment, that we see it as an example. So not only do we kind of innately have this feeling, this sense of like, oh, okay, this is how I'm supposed to work, we see it represented around us. And so we get that reinforcement. Oh yeah, I am supposed to, be afraid, or I am supposed to prove myself. And that's how I know that I'm worthy, or I'm lovable, or whatever it is that we're seeking in our lives. So number one is that this is everything I teach and share is never about judging where we are or who we are. This is really about gaining the skills that we not only just need, but that we really want, because every woman that I ever talk to, speak to, engage with, she wants to give. And I want to show you a way that you get to keep doing that from a place that is really just filled with the same energy, that excitement, that quality, that level that you want to give at. And you get to keep doing it. So control. First of all, let me point out that in my 5 C's that I talk about, control lies in it's a second piece of this sort of cycle. And I probably should have written this as a circle. I'm also trying something new today, so let me know at the end of this if you like it, but I wanted to find a little bit more of an interactive way to teach with you. So I'm going to kind of be writing it along instead of sharing slides today. So control comes after clarity, and we're going to talk a little bit about why in a second, but just to understand, when I mention these C's, it's clarity, control, confidence, curiosity, and creativity. And you're actually going to cycle through these in order to, a way of almost like doing, like, I say this is like mental fitness, right? So you're building these mental muscles. These are your reps that you're going to do, and they're going to help you get stronger and stronger and stronger and show up more consistently the way that you want to show up. So starting here today is with control. All last month I talked about clarity, and it is really important. But today, like I said, we're going to dive into control. So the first thing we're going to talk about is we need to know, where are we handing this out, right? And what does it look like? What does it feel like when we're not in control? Anytime that you're feeling exhausted, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling stressed, even anger and frustration, these are all clues that you are not feeling in control. Okay. You've heard me talk about this before probably, but I'm going to say it again. We are always on this sort of continuum where at one end we are at, sometimes when it feels really hard and we're at a bottom, it feels like desperation. But really what is it's a disempowered state. And when we move to the middle, we start to feel a little more hopeful, and we think we see possibility. we can see something else on the horizon. But when we move all the way to the other end, we're actually at decision, which is what control is. I am choosing to create something, to initiate change, to do something different. And that power it's 100% just, it's me, it's within me. And this is true. This is what control is. And this is where I want to try to get you to return to really consistently. Because we're not going to be able to necessarily control, right, the first thought that pops into our head, but we do get to choose the second, right? And every time we keep re-choosing that thought, we're flexing that muscle, we're getting stronger. So the first thing that I want to say then is that we lose our power anytime we I'm going to use a bigger marker. So we lose it, number one, when we let anything outside of us change what we think, what we say, what we do, or what we feel. So external factors. This is one place we lose control. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few examples. What does this look like? Okay, let's talk about this idea of being a sensitive person. Okay, sensitivity is this, what it really is it's a lack of acceptance. Okay, and it's a clue for us though, right? We don't have to let it be something that makes us feel bad, because again, we're allowing that feeling to kind of rise up within us. So what it is what we really want to be able to do is again, this is why we start with clarity, because one of the pieces of clarity is not only to know what we want in our life, but it's to know who we are and to have clarity around this. And it doesn't mean that we are perfect, that we are 100% where we want to be, right? That's not what it's about. It's about acceptance. It's about knowing and offering this thing to myself of saying, you know what? I know that I am a generous person, a kind person, an intelligent person. I'm a responsible person. I am a kind person, right? Whatever it is, if we don't know it for ourselves as a truth, as a belief, right? And then it's up for question. When someone else makes a comment or says something or does something, if we're not sure that of what the answer is, like, yep, nope, I already know I'm generous. I already know I'm kind. I know I'm smart. I'm, whatever it is, then it's up for question. And that's what creates this feeling of sensitivity, right? So empathy is your superpower. It is a strength, because that's where we engage with people. And, we're really trying to meet people where they are, see people, we're learning, we're offering ourselves a new perspective. But when we're sensitive, what we're really doing is we're kind of closing ourselves off, and anything that's not expansive isn't really serving us. So remember that sensitivity is, I don't want to say like a fix, but there's a way to stop feeling this sort of emotional roller coaster around what happens in your life and how that makes you feel. And the first step really there is to have acceptance around, here's where I am, here's where I want to be, right? And so when someone says, hey, you didn't show up in the way that I expected, or hey, whatever, like, when I was in college, we used to go out to a lot of group dinners. And one of the tricky things about going out with a bunch of like 19 and 20-year-olds is splitting the bill, right? Like 10 ways. So inevitably at the end of the night, there was always a sort of, somewhat heated conversation around who's going to pay how much and how much are we going to tip the waiters. Okay, so I have two friends that I was pretty much always with, and one was always a really big tipper and the other one did not tip as well. And there was always this sort of argument around, hey, and so there was always the accusation, like one against the other, like, hey, you're cheap, right? Why won't you, fork over another $5 or whatever? But the curious thing is that my friend who, was an adamant 15% tipper while the other one was an adamant 20% tipper, she was really certain. She said, no, I've worked in the service industry. I'm okay with receiving 15%. I'm going to tip 15%. And it was fascinating because for me, I've always been, I'm happy to tip with, whatever the person at the table wants to tip the most, I'm happy to chip in. But it was interesting because even though I wasn't the one being accused of that, it was something that it struck a chord within me. Like, gosh, I don't want to ever be seen as like the cheap one or the stingy person. Right. And for the longest time, I felt like that at the table. And like, I would be afraid to be the first person to say, all right, well, hey, I'll put down this much for the tip, right? I'd wait. And, whoever had the highest amount, I'd match it. But here's the truth is that I realized much further down the road, right, that it was something that I was not 100%. I didn't accept that I was a generous person. And, you know, this comes from many, many experiences, right? That get stacked that then create this belief within us. But, you know, when I said, you know what, generosity can look like a lot of different things. Generosity can look like money. Generosity can look like love. It can look like time. It can, you know, even our thoughts are generous, right? So if I don't match the way I, you know, envision what I think a generous person is, right, then I don't accept that I'm a generous person. So you can kind of see how this kind of evolves, whether it's, you know, again, like, oh, you know, am I the smartest person in the room, or am I good enough to be here? Am I allowed to use my voice? Whatever it is, right? We have to find some level of acceptance within us so that we're not showing up as this sort of sensitive person that's vulnerable to, you know, to somebody else's thoughts and decisions about who we are or how we're showing up. We get to offer this to ourselves first and really then show up as powerfully as we can. And we always get to use curiosity, right? To ask ourselves when someone says something, is this true? But we get to harness all of this constructive living method is really about harnessing this power of being objective. It's really that simple. It's just saying, instead of putting myself down or assuming the worst about myself, right? Like, oh yeah, I really can't do that. Or, oh gosh, I am this. I get to say, well, is this even true? If it's true, I get to do something about it. And if it's not, I get to just, you know, water off a duck's back, really, right? It doesn't affect me. It doesn't matter. So that's one example. Another example of this sort of external things kind of changing us is how we plan our schedules. If you look at your calendar, right? I want you to say, think about, I mean, it's Friday, so you can think about what your weeks look like this week or what next week looks like, and what is on your schedule, right? What are the things that are showing up in there that are getting planned? Are they things that you're planning? Are they things that somebody else is putting into your schedule? Other people asking for your time and your energy, right? Or, you know, and the next thing to do then is to say, what's not on your schedule? Okay, what are you not doing? Because a lot of times what I see and hear is that we want, right? There's this desire to create, okay, well, I want to be physically fit and I want to eat well and I want to, you know, spend time with my kids and I want to, you know, spend time with my partner. I want to do all of these things. But as my week goes or my day goes and somebody says, oh, hey, can you meet for 15 minutes? I really need to do this thing. Oh, hey, can you do this thing for me? And then this, you know, kind of gets bumped up the schedule. What I want starts getting knocked off my calendar, right? And when I'm doing that, I'm letting somebody else prioritize my life. And so this can happen in a day, it can happen in a week, it can happen in a year. And then it just, again, it's the stacking effect that you can end up years, decades into your life realizing that, oh my gosh, I have just spent all these years being busy and doing things, but I wasn't always doing what mattered to me. And so we want to be sure that in our calendar, we are planning and not just letting somebody else kind of take it in, which is, you know, one of the things we're going to talk about at the end when we talk about what are these intentional things we get to do for ourselves. And those intentions are around actually planning for the things that we want in our life, right? Setting our values, living by our values, doing what matters is how we, right? It's that feeling of progress. Like, yes, I had a great trip with my friends. Oh, I got to visit my family. I, spent time doing something that was important to me. I read a book, I gardened, right? Whatever it is that we are really intentional about guarding this. And, because it is what's going to bring us, just these small moments are going to add up to the life that we live. And the third thing, again, and the external factor that I want to bring up is the idea that we react versus respond. So again, when I talk about being a product of your environment, we are our habits, right? The things that we are used to doing, thinking, saying, acting, that is kind of what our reaction kind of looks like. And so we want to remember that when we begin with clarity and planning, when we know who we are, what we want, big picture, and then zoomed in for what am I doing today, right? When we know that, then we get to pause before we engage. So if I'm having a conversation, if it's with somebody difficult in my life, somebody that challenges me, I homeschool, so I spend a lot of time with my kids and they offer me many, many opportunities to grow as a human. So when something comes up, I get to first think about, before I respond, before I snap, think about what is my main goal? What's my clarity around this? And then I get to choose how I respond. So I could snap, I could yell, I could ignore, right? There are many choices that kind of come up. And whatever is your habit is usually what you're going to do, right? But when we choose and kind of shift into this idea of let me respond, this is thoughtful, this is intentional, right? What's the point? For me, like with my kids, right? It's, I want them to know that no matter what the situation is, right? The very foundation for the way I want to communicate with them is they're safe and they're loved and they're respected. So it doesn't always feel easy. It's not always something I want to hear. It's not always delivered the way I want to hear it, right? But when I approach it first from this lens, right, then again, I'm using empathy as my strength. I'm not using sensitivity that's saying, oh, my kid spoke to me this way. That means they don't respect me. And then that means, I'm not doing a good job as a parent. And, it really can snowball. So when I really choose and know in my mind, how do I want to, what's the point that I want to come across, right? Have that clarity. Then I get to shift from reacting to responding. And I think this is most powerful really with the people that we love, because the other people in our lives, like our coworkers and even friends, right? We have more of a natural filter. We don't say the first thing that comes out of our mouth. We don't always take our feelings out on them, right? But the people that are closest to us are the people that we really want to flex this muscle with, because there is safety. And so our mind, our brain, right, who seeks safety, when it already feels safe, it can move on to something else, right? And so, well, I don't need to be that nice to this person. I don't need to, whatever. And then what happens is that our relationships, right, then they don't end up being the thing that we want. Like they're not as solid as we want. They're not as loving as we want. They're not as, just reciprocating as we want. Whatever it is, right, you get to choose. That's the thing, right? That's the beauty of your life. No one's going to, I'm not here to tell you should spend this much time with this person or not, or do this with your life. The point is you get to choose. I just want you to be clear on it. I want you to know what you want out of your relationships, out of your career, out of your free time. Just really have a picture for yourself. So you have a target. You can't hit something if there is no target, right? So those are really, this is, the big pieces around external factors, right? We allow them to change the way we think, what we say, what we do, what we feel. That's loss of control. The second mistake that we make is to believe we're in control when what we really are is we're being controlling. I don't know why that looks like I spelled it wrong. Okay. But controlling. So what's the difference? Okay. Control. This is super simple. And I don't want you to confuse simple for easy. Never said it was easy, but here it is. It's this simple. Control is just you. Anything that lies within your body, within your voice, your gestures, your thoughts, your feelings, that is your control. Everything else is influenced by you. You don't get to control outcomes. You don't get to control other people. You don't get to control anything outside of you, right? But here's the awesome part is that it's actually enough. It's more than enough if you just manage you. You just get to do you, and there's enough work there for all of us to just do ourselves. So what do I mean when I say influence? Okay, so the way we show up, what we choose to do, what we choose to say, again, kind of going back to that reacting versus responding, right? When we're showing up as thoughtfully as possible and, really with this idea of progress over perfection, right? This idea that we can be excellent. Like, what if I just shot for excellence and I didn't worry about what the outcome was, right? So if I'm going for a job interview, I can't control whether I get the job or not, right? That is not in my control. So when my head is there and I'm already at this outcome and I'm so worried that I'm not going to be perfect or I'm not going to say the right thing or be the right person, I'm already not showing up as my best. I'm already kind of lowering the bar of how I'm going to show up. But here's what I can do. I can do my research. I can find out who I'm speaking with and, learn more about the company. I can prep with a friend or in the mirror. I can, look up the competition. I can see, think about how can I contribute? And when I am invested in the process, right, which is the idea of progress, not perfect, not like, oh, if I get this, if I get the job, it means this. If I don't get the job, it means this, right? I'm really invested in the process, controlling just what I can control. Then I get to show up at that interview and crush it as much as I possibly can. And then no matter what the outcome is, I get to say, hey, I did my absolute best. I showed up as my best, right? And I could never do more than that. No matter where I am, I can never do more than my best, right? But, and the idea of progress and evolution is that my best I get to keep raising that bar and show up better and better and better. But I don't have to worry. I don't have to let fear sit with this idea of all the what ifs. Because as soon as I start to have fear planted in my head, and it's always there, it's a part of us. So we're not getting rid of fear. We're understanding that fear is information. And whenever I'm using or working from a place of fear, I'm using a different part of my brain. That's just science, right? We're dropping into a different part. We don't have access to the same parts, that allow us to be more creative and curious and engaging, right? The frontal part of our brain that's really about above survival, right? We're dropping into, I'm afraid. That means my brain is first concerned with safety, security, connection, right? Like I'm looking for different things on a subconscious level. So I'm making different choices. So let's work from a place where we have maximum influence, and that's by having maximum control. Okay. This also works again with loved ones, right? And with people that we engage in regularly. We can really often, especially with people we share a house with, we can get into this feeling of like, there's a ton of to-dos, and we can get into this idea that we are keeping tally or score, like, hey, I did the dishes, or I took out the trash, and then I did this, right? But when I can show up just in the process and say, you know what, today I'm going to show up and I'm going to contribute as much as I can. It influences the other people around me because I'm showing up with a different energy. I'm not angry. I'm not whatever, right? I'm breathing life into a space and saying, all right, guys. And when we create that kind of energy and that momentum, we bring others with us, right? This is why, that phrase, like, I think it was Kennedy said, right? Like a rising tide raises all ships. And so when we feel better, when we keep giving ourselves in a place, right, that feels good, and we're giving from this place of quality, right, where it's easy to give, it's contagious. And so that's the cool part, right? We get to keep control of ourselves. We feel good, and we're spreading that. We're saying, you got this too. I've got this. So I know that you can do it, right? I don't need to worry about your feelings, not in like a, unkind way, but it just means that when I believe, right, deeply believe that I get to be responsible for me, I know then you get to be responsible for you. So that's cool. If you have, if there's something going on, you get to tell me, right? I don't need to read your mind. I don't need to walk on eggshells. We don't need to yell at each other, right? There's a really different way of communicating when we show up in control of ourselves, right? We're shooting for best case scenarios when we have control and we're not being controlling, because this is grasping. And then we're back at that disempowered state. Right? When we shift into control and into decision, here's how I can show up, here's how I choose to show up. And we're shift into that really powerful end of the spectrum that's decision, right? And we are empowered and we're taking charge and we feel that energy. There's a difference. Not only do we feel it, but everybody around us feels it. So that is the awesome part. There's a Dolly Parton quote that I actually wanted to share earlier when I was talking about this idea of sensitivity. And she says, figure out who you are and then do it on purpose, right? So just know who you are and just go for it, right? Like approach your whole life this way. This is what offering yourself, right? That clarity around, hey, this is who I am and I'm always getting better and I'm always evolving, but this is who I am and this is how I'm showing up. So powerful. Love it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how do we keep it? All right, we talked about these are the ways that we kind of hand it out all day long, some of us, and how do we get to keep it? So number one, you see all this still? Okay, we get to keep it by believing. Okay, it matters what you believe. Number one, right? If you have to believe that you have this power within you, that you are in control. Because again, if it's just the conscious mind that says, yeah, I'd like to believe this, right? I'd like to believe that I'm in control. You're automatically, guys, you're leaving the back door open, right? There's another way out. And again, I love this. I'm really big on words. I'm such a visual learner. So when I hear this, like, I feel like it's the perfect metaphor, right? You got to burn the boats. If you burn the boats, you got only one way, right? You can't go back. You have to keep going forward. And so when you close that door behind you, right? And you say, nope, doesn't matter. I am in control. I am in control, and really create that belief solidly within you that it doesn't matter, right? And know that sometimes we get into this like illusion, right? That control means that I'm getting what I want, right? That the outcome is happening. Truly, control is at the smallest, minutest level, right? In your life is a thought. You're always in control of your thoughts. Everything around you can be falling apart, right? But you can choose how you see it. You can choose to see life, right? As saying, well, I get to do this, right? I wake up every day. I get to make my kids breakfast. I get to work from home. I get to homeschool my kids. I get to go to the grocery store. I get to do all these things, right? It's everything is the way we're looking at it. And that is life. It's not a fake reality. Our life is only what we choose to see, right? Everything else, our brain cannot hold on to all the other information. So our brain filters, distorts, removes, replaces, right? And it does everything for what we choose to focus on. So believe, right, that you are in control, and start with the thought, because no matter how disempowered you feel, if you just give yourself this opportunity to say, okay, how could I see this differently? How is this happening for me? Instead of it's happening to me. How is this happening for me? Right? Just getting to ask yourself that, right? I had a post, I think last week, that I really loved, and I shared this idea, right? That's like, I am in training for the life that I want, right? What do I want? All right. I want to feel amazing. I want to have all this, this stuff. I want to have this business. I want to have this life, these relationships, right? I'm in training for that. So life is giving me an opportunity to flex a muscle that I still need to grow, right? So you get to do it, even if it's a thought. Okay, how can I see this differently? And it's a thought, a positive, a constructive thought. Let me not even say positive, a constructive thought, right? Is something that's going to move you up, even if it's just a rung on the ladder, right? And every time we move up, we get a new perspective. You see something different when you climb the mountain, right? Even if it's a foot, 10 feet, 100 feet, you see something different. So all you need to do in the moment is offer yourself that next step up, right? And then you're going to open up something else. Okay, well, now I don't feel so bad. All right, maybe this was, it poured on a day that I needed to go out and run all these, and show up for a meeting, but it happened because, right? I don't know, right? I was 5 minutes late for the parking spot, and then this happened, and right. I mean, all the randomness in life is just, we don't know why it's happening for us, right? I mean, I met my husband on the subway, right? And it was a random occurrence. We happened to get on the same train at the same time because we left the house, right? Like all of these things in our life, right? I wouldn't have met him if I never went to New York. I wouldn't have been in New York if I didn't want to do, right? So we don't know why things are happening, right? We can only know looking back. So when you're in the moment, just remember you're in the moment and you don't yet know, but it's for a reason, right? We can use it if you allow yourself to have this perspective. So belief, right? This is all resilience really is, right? We hear this word a lot. It sounds like such an awesome word. Ooh, yeah, I want to be resilient. All you have to do then is offer yourself this piece of control. It isn't how many times you have that negative thought or have that down day or have this feeling, right? Of being disempowered. It's how many times do you choose again and say, nope, I got this. I can do this. What can I do? Right? It's showing up again and again and again and again and again, right? Again, it's just stacking the good, and we're going to get there, right? You get to do this. Control is absolutely in your power. Believe. Okay, the second one this is really big, and I know it can be difficult to digest, but again, it's a really simple idea. What if your emotions were just information? Okay, think about that for a second. Emotions, they feel really big, right? They take over us. They can be consuming. They can change our physiology, right? We're connected, mind, body, spirit, it's all one thing, right? But emotions are actually just information. We don't need to be afraid of them, even fear, right? We don't need to be afraid. It's just information. I get to ask myself, when I believe this, right? This is another belief. When I believe this, what do I get to ask myself? Well, I, number one, get to stay really in tune, because my body is always telling me my emotions are chemicals, right? The way I feel them, right? And so I'm always getting to stay connected to my body. If I start sweating, if I get knots in my stomach, butterflies in my stomach, my throat gets tight, these are all my emotions telling me something. My throat gets tight. I'm afraid to use my voice. Why am I afraid to use my voice, right? I just get to get curious, guys. I don't beat myself up and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I don't feel comfortable here, or I'm not as confident as I want to be, or how come I'm not the extroverted person that I like, my friend or my spouse or whatever. You get to be you, right? You just get to use the information to figure out why you're feeling this way, right? And then you get to decide for yourself. You get back into decision. What am I going to do about that feeling? Right? So if I'm scared of something, why am I scared to show up, right? with a lot of creative entrepreneurs, right, who have to show up on camera a lot. And this is part of the way, the world has evolved, and business is about engaging, right, with people, whether it's live, whether it's online. But really, we as people, right, as personalities, we're doing this all the time, whether it's for our business or for ourselves, and just being social. So when we have information like fear, nerves, discomfort, maybe our digestion is starting to change, right? These are all signs like, I don't want to engage with this person. I don't like being in this scenario. We can just understand what that means and then say, okay, why don't I like being with this person? What can I offer myself, right? This is the control. This is the whole idea of my bigger concept, right? Of rescue yourself. You're not rescuing yourself because you're alone in the world and there's no one here to help you. You're rescuing yourself because you get to, right? You get the great privilege of breathing today, of showing up on this planet, and you also get to rescue yourself from all of the things that you don't want in your life. So what are these feelings telling you? And you just get to decide, right? It's just a slow, okay, ask why and kind of go back. All right, well, if I feel uncomfortable in a situation, a social situation, well, I don't like talking to so many people. Okay, well, what kind of plan can I make? Number one, do I have to say yes? Do I need to go? Or am I just doing this because, again, I'm filling my schedule because of an obligation, right? Number two, if I do want to go, what could I do, right? I know somebody else who's going to be there that I really like, so I could hang out with this person. I could feel comfortable sitting and not engaging with somebody. I don't need to make that feel awkward. If that's if that makes me feel good, then there's nothing wrong with it, right? We don't need to keep viewing everything through the lens of, how is somebody else going to perceive this? Oh, if I'm sitting at a party and I'm sitting by myself and no one's talking, people are going to think I'm cool, or I don't know, whatever it is for you, right? We each have our own stories and our own fears and our own desires of how we want to be seen in the world. But the thing is that we have to learn to offer this to ourselves, because what we offer ourselves, we get to keep, right? That's control. I get to keep that. I believe this about, I believe I'm smart. I believe I'm beautiful. I believe I'm intelligent. I believe I'm resilient. I believe I'm powerful. I get to keep that. If I'm waiting for somebody else to hand me that compliment, or hand me that salary, or hand me that job title, or hand me that, marriage certificate that says, oh, okay, now you can be loved, what happens is somebody else also gets to take it away, right? It's fragile, and it isn't yours to keep if you don't offer it to yourself. Okay. So once you offer it to yourself, the channels are open. You get to receive as much as you want, right? From your life. So always remember, right? Emotions, information. I don't have to be afraid of them. I just get to do something about it. I get to make a choice. Do I want to still feel this way, right? Is the number one thing. How am I feeling? And do I still want to feel this way? Yes, great. No, let's do something about it, right? Choice. Okay, and the third piece here that's gonna allow us to keep our control, our power really, right, is to invest in these 3 phases of success, to really understand that we're always want to be cycling through this idea that we want to plan, right? That's clarity. We want to execute. That's control, where we are today. And we want to reflect, which is curiosity and creativity, and really confidence is in that piece of how we reflect on ourselves. And here's the word that I want to use, the adjective. We want to do this in a healthy way, okay? You're already doing probably some of this stuff, right? You're reflecting back, but you're probably using what you've been taught, right? The way that we are already communicating with each other, which is comparison, judgment, guilt, regret, shame, complaining, right? We're just sitting with the problem without thinking about, okay, the whole point about understanding that I don't like where I am, or I didn't hit the goal that I wanted to, or whatever, is that I get to decide now what, right? It's always this choice. Now what? So, right? So if I'm in control and I decide, okay, I'm doing this workshop today, nobody shows up, let's just say, right? Nobody shows up. What am I going to do with that? It's my choice, right? Here's what I can do. I can say, you know what? This was an awesome opportunity that I got to practice a really cool workshop. I'm going to get better at it the next time. I feel confident, right? Because here's what I'm doing. I'm offering myself this opportunity to start to see life as win-win or win-learn. There's no losing, right? There's no losing if I'm learning. So I can gain some confidence there and say, hey, I've got one more workshop under my belt. Awesome. And then I can say, you know what? Not so cool that nobody showed up. What can I do differently? I wonder why nobody showed up. Was it the timing that I did it? Was it was it that I didn't talk about enough? Did people just not know? I don't have to say, right? The alternative could be I don't offer myself any confidence, that I take away what little I had and say, oh gosh, I totally sucked. Nobody showed up. I guess what I say doesn't have any value, right? I could do that, but that's not healthy, right? It's not helping me grow or show up or commit to this mission that I have. And so I can get curious and I can ask, what could I have done differently? And then I get to get creative. Okay. Then I get to come up with as many ideas of what I could do. Oh, I could hire somebody. I could talk. Maybe there's somebody who could help me figure out what I am doing because I can't see it. Maybe I could just show up more. Maybe I could do more workshops. Right? I get to just idea generate. I get to be in ideation, which feels really good. It's again, this expansion. All of these have an opportunity where you can get expansive or you can shrink. Okay. So when we practice expansion, it also builds momentum, just like a downward spiral, right? You can actually get yourself on an upward spiral. Keep flexing these muscles, right? So plan, we're here executing, and you want to then really have a healthy way of reflecting. And when you do these three things, right, you're receiving more. And this is the whole point, right? That I'm going to jump into like these intentional acts that we get to do, right, to actually practice flexing this muscle. But what I want to point out here is that we all have ways of giving. You already know a million ways to give. Okay. I don't think you need any help with that. I think that's really fun, that you get to choose that for your life. I want to be here to teach you something different. I want to teach you how to receive. Okay. Because imagine that, okay, so I'm in Chicago. Imagine that I'm driving to Denver, right? And that's my goal. I want to give, right? That's my giving goal. It's like this distance. So I get in the car and I just start driving. Okay. I didn't plan to receive, right? Which means I didn't plan any gas stops. So do I? I fully expected to get there without filling gas, right? Everyone, that's ridiculous, right? I can see your faces being like, that doesn't make any sense. And yet that's how we're going through our life, right? We're saying, okay, I want to give and 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 I want to give. But none of us can be, right? In order to give, you must receive. Okay, so there's nothing selfish about it. It's actually the really cool part. And I'm going to talk about this because we in life, in our current environment, we see two kinds of people, I think. Bucket one is a giver. Bucket two is a taker. Okay, raise your hand or drop a me in the chat, right? If you identify more as a giver. Okay, right? Raise your hand. So yes. So you are a giver because nobody likes a taker, right? We all experience them and they're ew and gross and like, I don't want to be like that. So that is right. This is what's in our head. This is this belief system. And here's the funny part is that we can be givers 99% of the time. And here's the belief, the minute that we stop giving, we think we fall into the second bucket. We think we're takers. Okay. It's not true though. I'm going to offer you a third alternative. Okay. If you're not giving, it doesn't necessarily automatically drop you into the taking bucket. Okay. So hold on to this thought. We're going to talk about this. The current system, right? The current way that we operate, these habits that were really ingrained in us, built in us, taught to us, exemplified around us, right? Even by the people we admire, right? Is giving and giving and giving. And so when we ask ourselves, how can I give, right? Ooh, I have, and especially as we're young and we kind of, bring more and more into our lives, right? Bigger careers, or the choice to stay home, right? Taking on whatever, family, spouses, marriage, right? Like everything, it's as you hold on to it longer, it's more and more of your energy, right? To keep all of this kind of going. Oh, and by the way, I also wanted to travel and I wanted to have this kind of lifestyle and I want to feel this way and I want to look this way. And right? All of it is reasonable. It's wonderful that you want to bring all this joy into your life. But here's the thing is that when you ask yourself, and how do I give? The answer is always work harder, work more, right? That's the answer that society gives us. But here's the thing. What if I offered you a new operating system, a new habit that when you ask yourself, how can I give? You ask yourself, get curious, and you say, how could I receive consistently so that I can keep giving, right? Because the answer is that you get to give when you learn how to receive. And then you never have to stop, because you don't have to stop at the gas station. It's like you're carrying your own bucket of gas with you, right? You get to keep going and going and going. You're like that Energizer bunny. So here's the cool thing is, like, there's bucket one, that's the giver. There's bucket two, that's the taker. We all want to stay away from that bucket, right? Those people are not enjoyable to be around. And so bucket three is this idea that we get to be what I call extraordinary givers. Okay, doesn't that sound awesome, to be an extraordinary giver? We all have the heart for this. We just don't all have the energy to do it, right? But this is where we want to be. We want to be in that third bucket. And the idea is that these extraordinary givers, we can call them people who are givers and receivers. So I'm going to call this bucket the receiver bucket. Extraordinary givers, right? They're the unicorns. We probably know maybe like one person, maybe two people in our lives that are really showing up like this, right? It's not an example we see often. You know, they're the people that we can ask for a favor that we don't feel afraid to ask. Number one, because we know they're giving from an extremely generous place. It's not like this, let me check my schedule thing, right? They're the people that are like, yes, absolutely, right? And we also feel comfortable asking them because we know that if it truly wasn't possible for them, they wouldn't do it. They also know when to say no, right? By holding this boundary, it's a way that they also receive. And that is how that they become these unicorns, right? They become these extraordinary givers. And that is for all of us when we just make this small shift within us that allows us to receive, right? This is all part of this control. When I am controlling this, my life, the way I'm showing up, I get to be in this third bucket, right? This is what's possible. So, okay, so what can we practice to do these things and live in this way? Number one, I'm going to start with kind of like the big picture, these long-term kind of things that we can do for ourselves. And then I'm going to talk about what we can kind of like nail it down to even what we do in the moment. So some of the big picture things that we do is something that I talk about, creating a foundational state for ourselves. And I call it a least good state because here's the thing. It's not least because we're setting the bar low. It's least because as a receiver, what you'll find out is as long as you're giving to yourself consistently, it doesn't take that much to fill you up, right? To fill your cup. The problem is that we get so depleted that it's like, if I asked you, right, well, what do you need right now? I have people who have told me, I need like a 3-month vacation. I need like a 3-week break from my family. I need to get away. I need it to all stop. That's so impractical, right? We're not ever leaving our lives behind, most of us, right? We want a way to just figure out, like, somebody give me the answer. How do I have this, energy to keep showing up, to do the things that I want, right? Not just to have kids, but to enjoy them, not just to have a marriage, but to enjoy this partnership, not just to travel and go on vacation, but I want to enjoy the vacation. I don't want the vacation to just get me, from like out of bed to, okay, by the last day of vacation, now I'm feeling like refilled and energetic, only to come back to work, right? To spend it all again. We want to find this place where we're consistently giving. So the least good state is something, and I've taught it in other workshops, but just really quickly, is that it's offering yourself something every day, every week, somehow building this into your schedule, like literally, the same way you plug in, I have a hair appointment, or I have my nails or whatever, right? Put it into your calendar, because you have to plan for success. It doesn't happen by accident. So plan for these things. And there's 4 items, and I call them gems. So G is you want something for your growth. All of us, again, this idea that happiness and fulfillment comes from this idea that we're growing, that we're not stagnant. So maybe it's learning something new, trying something new, eating something new, whatever it is, bringing something fresh into your life, daily, weekly, monthly, right? You're going to figure out, what feels good and what's starting to restore you really consistently. But start with an item for growth, gems, G. E is enjoyment. Got to do something for joy. It can be taking a 2-minute walk, right? None of this is about, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have the money. There are things available to you that you don't realize that are there for your joy, right? 10 minutes of reading. Sometimes when we get so stuck in this sort of hamster wheel of we're just on go, and it's this stagnant energy it's tough to break out of, that it's crazy that sometimes we can even feel like our life can't wait 10 minutes. But the truth is that it can, right? And if 10 minutes feels too much, start with 5. If 5 feels too much, start wherever you can. That's why it's the least good state. You want to it's like sticking your foot in the door and then being able to have the space to kind of elbow in bigger room until you start to feel this state of, okay, so now I feel what a routine of receiving feels like. Okay. And here's the cool part is that as you are starting to do things for yourself, right, to create this space, you're also actually going to be receiving from the things you're giving. You're receiving at the same time that you're giving, right? When I'm burnt out and I come and I make dinner for my kids and I'm just like, oh my gosh, and I'm like throwing it together and putting it down and sitting at the table and I'm like mentally just toast, right? I gave, but I didn't receive anything. All I did was I felt like I had to do this chore. But when I'm feeling good, I do the same activity. It takes me less energy, right? Because I'm happily doing something. Maybe I'm listening to a podcast or talking to somebody in the kitchen. I'm doing this. I sit down at a meal. I hear my kids laughing. They tell me about their day, something that happened, or my husband sits down and shares something funny that he saw on Instagram or whatever, right? I am giving, right? I made that meal. I'm sitting with this time, but I'm also receiving at the same time. I'm getting from what I'm giving. So it starts to create this momentum in your life that, right, when you're showing up the way you want to, you're actually receiving not just from like these planned things like, oh, all this self-care, but your life is actually feeding back into you. And that feels amazing, right? So keep practicing this, because as you start to open up the space, just the mental capacity, this belief that I get to receive, you start to open yourself up to these things. Okay, so that was growth, enjoyment. The M in GEMS is movement. Guys, you got to move. I used to not push this, but it really is that important. We move stress through our bodies. It's an endorphin release. It's so many things. And we can often accompany movement with something, that multiplies that joyful effect. Maybe we walk with a partner, or we go for a hike with our kids, or we gather some friends, or I do it alone even, but I disconnect without a phone and I hear the sounds, I smell the air, right? I'm really engaging in this idea that I'm moving my body and increasing our heart rate, right? So many good things that come from it that we want to consistently do it. And then the last one in that is sleep. So it's really important, and you'll know what starts to feel good for you. The average, obviously, that they recommend 7-8 hours. If you can't get to that, again, what can you get to? Can you add 15 more minutes to your sleep window, then 30 minutes? Then, there's always a way. It's not an all or nothing, right? It's not like, oh, I sleep for 4 hours, or if I can't sleep for 8, then I'm going to forget it. It's not like that. We can feed ourselves a little bit at a time and expand. So that's one of like the really broad things. But what can we do daily? Daily, you can do things like end routines and beginning routines. So like AM and PM. What are things you do in the morning that you intentionally, right? This is the key, guys, around these activities, is that you're actually you're stopping and you're thinking, which means you're taking charge of your mind. That's decision control. And by doing this consistently, you keep reminding yourself, oh, I am in control. Oh, look, see, I just chose that, right? Whether it's a morning routine, like, hey, I'm going to build my growth into my morning cup of coffee because I'm going to read the newspaper, or I'm going to read this magazine or read this book while I have my coffee, or I'm going to go for a walk while I do whatever, right? So as we create routines for ourselves, and really important, I think, are the end of day routines. A lot of us have a hard time winding down from a work day. It's heavy. It comes with us. It comes home with us, or I work at home, so it's literally always around me. I have to have a routine that I set myself that lets my brain trust that I can turn it off, right? So that then I can turn on and be, again, open to receiving when I'm around the people that I want to be with, or doing the things that I want to do, right? If I'm always on and my mind is always on, I mean, I have had nights where I wake up with a to-do list, right? Oh my gosh, I forgot to do this thing, or oh, I got to remember to make that call in the morning. And when we end our day really thoughtfully, intentionally, right? Write a list. Every night before I close my computer and shut down my workday, I already plan for my next day, because then I feel good. I know that nothing's slipping through the cracks. I'm not going to wake up and realize, oh my gosh, tomorrow I had a meeting and I didn't realize it. I know what I need, and so I set myself up the night before. And so you can start to see how, okay, well, what are the things that where does my mind go, right? Instead of being present. And how can I set myself up to create some sort of end of day? It's really this trust bridge with myself, right? Like, it's okay, brain. We got this. Here's why. Because now every day we're doing this thing, and your brain's slowly going to start to learn, yeah, well, you get this. I totally can take this off. I can take that vacation. I can take this weekend off, take this hour off. I can rest in the evenings, right? Whatever it is. You'll figure out, again, what works for you. So those are end routines. And even within the day, things I call bookends. So if you said every hour, or every 2 hours, or, some people literally set an alarm. I prefer something a little more organic, but like in between things, just really intentionally saying, okay, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. I mean, how often do you stop to even think about what you breathe, right? How you breathe, right? Most of us do not take a breath that deep at any point in the day. So again, stepping into your day, breaking that habit cycle and saying, okay, I'm getting intentional, I'm taking control. Again, shifting back into, hey, I just made a decision, I'm back in control. We start to practice this and we get better at it. So the last one then in these moment to moments is really what I want to emphasize is this power of the pause, right? When we pause, we give ourselves the opportunity to check in with ourselves. How am I feeling? And again, my kids have taught me this through many years of experience, but like I started to vocalize what I was feeling instead of just act on it. So when I would hear myself say, even if it wasn't out loud, I am very frustrated right now, automatically I started, it would get me thinking, oh, why am I getting frustrated about this? Or, yep, okay, that is really frustrating right now, but what can I do, right? It shifts you out of the mindset of something's happening to me, this victim feeling of like, here I am disempowered again, right? All the way back over to, yes, I acknowledge how I'm feeling. What do I want to do about it, right? Do I want to stay frustrated? Do I want to yell at my kids? Do I want to walk away? What do I want to do? I get to choose. And taking this breath, this moment, it doesn't even have to be a little breath, but just even verbalizing to yourself before you say it, like, oh my gosh, it's irritating, or oh my gosh, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to say yes to this thing this person's asking me, right? Whatever it is, right? We tend to feel this thing coming on, and then we react, right? And so how can we choose to just practice not feeling like we have to give somebody an answer in the first 5 seconds, or even say something, right? Or, that it could be okay to say, okay, well, let me think about this for a second, right? To offer yourself the time. You're also setting an example, right? And offering the other person in this space time, especially if it's a really charged conversation or environment. You're just giving yourself the opportunity to shift from react to respond. Again, back at that end of the continuum that says, I get to decide, I get to choose, I am in control. That's belief. Because my emotions are just information, right? And here I am choosing what I want. So those are really like the 4 things again, right? Around creating intentional acts, because success doesn't happen by accident, right? So you can create foundational, a schedule, right? Of how you're going to start to receive in your life. What can you do for yourself? Because first you want to learn how to offer it to yourself. Because if you don't, right, the channel just isn't open. So when it comes from someone else, when your kid runs up to give you a hug, it can feel like an interruption in your day. When your partner shares something, you can be like, oh my God, I don't want to hear about your day, right? But when we open ourselves up to receiving from ourselves, even first, we get to open up these channels. And it's like, it's like Drano. You just, once it's clogged, it's really amazing what starts to kind of pour into your life. So that's really what I wanted to share with you guys. I really hope that you enjoyed learning about control and your blocks, right? And here's where I want to encourage you, right? To remember that, be careful where you're making your decisions from, okay? If you're making a decision from a place where you don't feel great, you're probably not making the same choices you would in your life if you were in a different place emotionally, right? If you were in a different state. So offer yourself this state, because when we start again to stack enough of those actions that we keep choosing things that like, I didn't show up as a mom I want to be. I didn't do the work that I wanted to do. That wasn't as good as I wanted to be, right? We stack those, and then those become our beliefs about ourselves because they become our habit. I'm a procrastinator. I just don't have the energy. Oh, I just get angry. That's just who I am, right? Whatever it is, right? When we show up this way over and over again, we believe that to be who we are, but it's really not, right? It's a state that we put ourselves in, and we have the opportunity, we get to change that state and put ourselves in a higher place, so that when we're making the choices from a place of where we want to be, right? What is that person? What is that woman doing with her life? How is she living? The woman that I want to be, I'm already her. I just need to make those choices, and then those points meet, right? If I'm making the choices of my future self, of what she's doing, what she wants in her life, what she looks like in her life. She works out every day. Maybe I'll start with working out 5 minutes a day. Maybe that's where I start, but you're going to close the gap if you're making decisions from that future point of view, right? Not from where you are right now. So offer yourself this, guys. I want to share, right? I do clarity calls so that we can get on and just get you guys talking about this, because this idea of receiving is not about being dependent on me or anybody else in your life, right? It's really just how do we start to open up these channels? Because as soon as you figure out, right, your way, your method of receiving, you get to be bucket 3, you get to be that extraordinary giver that you want to be, and be that unicorn in the world, and bring others along with you. So I have truly enjoyed and loved being here with you today. Thank you for showing up, and I will let you know about the next ones, but absolutely reach out to me. I want to be a part of your journey, and I want to help you to do all the things that you want to do in the way that you want to do them. So thanks again for showing up.